Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the poem of the day for today, Saturday, October the 4th, 2025. Thank you for joining us again, or welcome to you for the first time. As promised, I wanted to return to some more seasonally appropriate poems, not to say that Bishop and Haney were not necessarily seasonally appropriate because they dealt a lot with nature and humans' relationship to nature, transitions, the passing of time, the earth, boundaries, demarcations, coming of age, and all of those things I think can be placed onto fall as well. But I'm being more kind of obviously festive today, and we'll be reading Louise Glück's poem All Hallows, because we are, as you know, in spooky season now in October. And if you don't know much about Louise Glück, she was a American poet who lived from 1943 to 2023, dies at the age of 80. Published several books of poetry. If you find her collected works at Barnes and Noble, it's about this big, and was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2020 for her works of poetry. I think her last one was called, actually, I have it over here. Oh, Faithful and Virtuous Night, I think was her last collection that she published, and that was a National Book Award winner. I should probably it's right here. Yeah, really nice cover. And so I've taught a few of her poems before. She has a very wide variety of styles and techniques and subjects that she covers. She was a very versatile poet, which I think is probably why the Nobel Committee, as well as the National Book Award Committee, recognized her. I also find that some of her poems are really rather simple and surface level and easy reads and kind of joyful and fun in that way. And some of them are quite challenging, dense, complex, complicated work. So she also seems to have a work for everyone, kind of no matter what mood they're in or how deeply they want to engage with poetry at that time. The one today is shorter and I think a bit simpler. That's not to say that there's nothing in there to talk about, but I think it's less complicated than some of the things that I remember reading in Faithful and Virtuous Night. And so we'll get to All Hallows here now. This poem is from 1995, and this is All Hallows by Louise Glück. Even now, this landscape is assembling. The hills darken. The oxen sleep in their blue yoke. The fields having been picked clean. The sheaves bound evenly and piled at the roadside among cinquefoil as the toothed moon rises. This is the bareness of harvest or pestilence. And the wife leaning out of the window with her hand extended as in payment, and the seeds distinct, gold, calling, come here, little one. And the soul creeps out of the tree. All right. Fun, creepy poem. All Hallows, obviously an allusion to All Hallows Eve or Halloween, the night before the celebration of the saints and the souls. This is a 3-stanza poem. The first stanza is 7 lines long. The second is 8, with that repetition at the end of come here, little one, giving us an anaphora in the last 2 lines of the second stanza. And then the third stanza is just 1 line, and the soul creeps out of the tree. This is a free verse poem, so there was no rhyme scheme to it that you noticed, but there are sonic qualities that I want to identify in a moment. Just from the standpoint of surface and image, this poem begins with a description of this barren landscape. After a harvest or perhaps after a pestilence, everything has been picked clean. It's completely gone. There is nothing left, nothing to glean. We're at the end of the fall harvest, and so everything is dead and dry and bare, almost like a graveyard. And I think because there are 2 stanzas in this poem, and the first one describes the barren landscape and the second refers to the woman, I think there's also an undercurrent of infertility, not just of the land, but also that this woman might have lost a child or might even have a barren womb, um, which makes the ending, I think, more chilling. So the first stanza, there are certain aspects that you can hear within the lines, within her use of enjambment, in particular, elements of assonance. So some things that I noticed as I was reading. Um, the hills darken the oxen, so that creates kind of an internal rhyme in line 2. Then we get the fields having been picked clean, the sheaves bound evenly. So there's some nice assonance within the 6th and 7th line there. And that comes right before this ending phrase, as the toothed moon rises, which I think is spooky because obviously, we know the moon doesn't rise, but it's kind of animating the moon, making the moon move. It's the earth that moves and not the moon. But it's toothed, which gives it, in my mind, something almost like the Cheshire Cat out of Alice in Wonderland or something. It gives it a very sinister, almost demonic quality to it. And that the night, or the Hallows here, then is something closer to a witching hour than just a peaceful and tranquil night. And the first line says this: the landscape is assembling, which I think is also another creepy phrase, because it again kind of animates or gives a soul to the landscape, that as soon as the moon rises and darkness comes over, that the landscape kind of gathers up together almost as its own kind of community or animate forest. And the second stanza then tells us that this is the barrenness of harvest or pestilence. Now, what's interesting about the lack of certainty there is it's either abundance or the complete lack thereof. And the narrator of the poem, whoever it is, doesn't really know. They're not able to see. All they know is that everything is gone, and they're somewhat kind of indifferent as to whether this was a life-giving and fruitful harvest or whether everything was blighted and cursed and taken away. And I think that ambiguity then takes us directly to the woman, who, again, may be barren or maybe has lost a child. Maybe there was a pestilence, or maybe it came to harvest. She's leaning out the window, her hand extended as in payment with the seeds. And then that's where she calls, come out, little one. So there's this, cultish, almost like nature pagan exchange of offering out these seeds in order to get the soul of what I'm assuming is a child to come out of this tree. It doesn't ever specify, but I think the fact that it's a woman and there's this undercurrent of fertility, barrenness, and harvest throughout the poem, that the way that I imagined this poem when I was reading it was that the little one, the soul that creeps out of the tree, is a child's soul. Whether the child is sort of hiding behind the tree or whether it's been like cursed and then kind of ensconced within the tree, and the woman has to offer these seeds to the land for the child's soul to be set free, is not entirely clear to me. I tend to like the second reading better because it establishes this will on behalf of nature that we find within the first line of the landscape assembling. So the woman then, when she has kind of had her own harvest and has these seeds, makes this exchange, but really the tree and the landscape and nature are kind of holding all the cards because she wants so badly to coax this soul out that, again, it doesn't specify as a child, but I'm assuming as a child. And to read between the lines, is this a child she never had that she gets to look upon and pretend is her own? Is this a lost child of hers that has somehow been, again, kind of like assumed into nature? Is it merely the apparition of the child so that she gets this revisitation from a sort of specter that reminds her of that? I don't really have the answer, and I think the ambiguity of the poem is part of what is gloomy and haunting about it, but I think is also part of what's perhaps kind of fun and playful, is that this is ultimately kind of a campfire ghost story that Gluck is giving us here. And yeah, I mean, I find it to be, like I said, a fun poem, despite the fact that there's an undercurrent of death, barrenness, and loss. There doesn't seem to be grief tied as much to the mood and the tone of the speaker as there is into the wife that is leaning out of the window here. Um, yeah, and so again, I think we can just kind of liken this to maybe a fun campfire story, but still a very rich and well designed poem. So thank you for joining today. I hope you enjoyed All Hallows by Louise Glück. I hope to see you again tomorrow and in the future. And in the meantime, may peace be with you.